Loud entertainment venues lead to hearing loss. Do they? Loud entertainment venues lead to hearing loss. Loud entertainment venues lead to hearing loss. Do they? Today I'll be breaking down how to conduct a structured search and how to comprehensively apply academic sources to support them. So, we have a statement. We are unsure if it is true or not, therefore we need to reconfigure our statement into a question, in order to be provided with insightful and specific evidence that pertains to it. When looking up do loud entertainment venues lead to hearing loss in the CINAHL database, I got around 1,700 results. So, what does this mean? This means we have to reconfigure our question. When reconfiguring a question, it is crucial that the research question is explicitly defined. There are many ways to do this, but the most common method is to divide your question according to patients, interventions, comparisons, and outcomes, the PICO model, saw Crandon 2017. Using the PICO framework, I have identified individuals for my population, as there is no specific age, gender, or ethnicity mentioned in the statement above. Loud entertainment venues is my intervention, and now when it comes to our comparison, there is none provided. However, one could assume that it may be quiet venues or no venues at all. I concluded that a comparison was not necessary to include, as it was not included in our statement, and I doubt it would have an effect on our search. And finally, for outcome, hearing loss was what I identified. Now that we have identified our keywords, we must remember to use synonyms, alternative words, in order to narrow down our search. Let's start with our P for individuals. Synonyms like people or persons can be used. And for I, loud entertainment venues, synonyms such as concerts or festivals can be used as they are associated loud venues. Finally, for our O, hearing loss, other synonyms such as hearing impairment or hearing disorder or hearing damage can be used. Now, I'm not sure if you realised, but I also sneakily incorporated Boolean terms into my question. What's a Boolean term? I'm glad you asked. Boolean terms are words and symbols such as and or that let you expand or narrow your search parameters. Using words such as and or alongside keywords creates a Boolean string that will refine your search to find the most relevant results and sources. Aaron Ryan, 2023. So, now that we've identified our keywords and our Boolean terms, let's search it. That's better. 2 results. Now, to ensure that our results are relevant and further narrow down our search, we use limiters. This includes using the CRAP test, Owen Ingram, 2023. The CRAP test is an acronym used as a checklist to help us evaluate the credibility and relevance of our sources. CRAP stands for C, currency. Information is rapidly evolving within the field such as medicine. Therefore, information can become obsolete. Was it published within the last 10 years? R is for relevancy. Is the information presented, related, and relevant to the topic? A is for authority. Who are the authors and their credentials? Is the source peer-reviewed? A is also for accuracy. Does the source match your understanding of the topic? And finally, P is for purpose. Is the purpose stated? Why was it produced? And is there any bias? I made sure when I was researching that I set the publication date to 2014-2024, my articles were peer-reviewed, and that I selected English language. And voila, still 2 results. The first article I found on CINAHL was titled Prevention of Noise-Induced Hearing Loss in Youth, with the provided information about the article presented on screen. The second article I found was titled An Estimation of the Whole Life Noise Exposure of Adolescent and Young Australians with Hearing Impairment. Then I went to another database, Google Scholar. When using Google Scholar, I realised that it was a bit harder to navigate placing limiters. However, I found a pronounced article titled Associations Between Recreational Noise Exposure and Hearing Function in Adolescents and Young Adults, a systematic review. Before I chose a source to summarise the findings, we must understand the hierarchy of levels of evidence. As this image by Eric Bass, 2013, demonstrates, the highest level of evidence is a systematic review. Sean Turney, 2003, defines a systematic review as a type of review that consists of reputable methods to find and synthesize all available evidence. It answers a clearly formulated question and explicitly states the methods used to arrive at the answer. Looking at the evidence I garnered, I will be choosing to focus my attention on the systematic review of associations between recreational noise exposure and hearing function in adolescent and young adults, as I believe believe it is the best available evidence of the three provided. This article is 23 pages long. Now I know it might be tempting just to read the abstract and move on, but that's not how we roll here. When appraising evidence, we need to read the whole article as it will give us the whole picture. The objective of this review was to narratively synthesize research that investigates associations between recreational noise exposure and hearing function. To develop the research question, the author used the acronym PEO, Population Exposure Outcome, an acronym similar to our PICO acronym. For population, they wrote normal hearing 0.5 to 0.8 kHz, adolescents and young adults from 10 to 30 years. For exposure, recreational noise activities. And finally, for outcome, associations between recreational noise, exposure, and hearing function, which subsequently led to the research question, does existing research indicate associations between hearing function and recreational noise exposure among adolescents and young adults? Their method was to compare and contrast findings, search their research question in a multitude of reliable databases such as PubMed, Web of Science, and CINAHL, just to name a few. To narrow down articles in order to fit their research question, they made sure the specifications were correct: age, outcome, focus. They made sure articles were only peer-reviewed, original articles were included, and articles published before the year 2000 were excluded, and no records with risk of bias were included. There were 20 studies included in the results. The total sample of the included studies reflects data from 2,939 individuals with the lowest mean age of 13.7 years and the highest being 24.3. The studies were heterogeneous regarding exposure assessment, populations and sample sizes, follow-up time and outcome measures. The conclusion of this review is that the included studies do not seem to be able to provide evidence that music leads to permanent hearing loss. However, this does not mean an association does not exist, as some cross-sectional studies often reflect short-term or temporary changes in hearing. Although this review concluded that longitudinal studies are needed to provide further insight into the long-term effects of recreational noise on hearing function. Now that we have summarised our article, we are going to move on to the reflection segment of this video. Health and Care Professional Council 2021 states that reflection allows you to identify and appreciate positive experiences and better identify ways we can improve. It can also be useful for processing experiences and what you have learned from them. Today, I'll be reflecting on my research experience using the Gibbs Reflective Model 1988. At the beginning of preparing for this assignment, I was unsure of where to start. Although, after carefully reviewing the requirements of this assignment, including the marking rubric, I began to jot down dot points of where I would like to start. I identified keywords, alternative words, and databases. Initially, I felt a mix of intrigue and anxiety. My favourite assessments are video types, as they truly allow me to be creative to an extent that essays inhibit. I was intrigued to explore different databases and find relevant evidence that pertains to my question. Speaking of my question, as a self-proclaimed music lover, I chose this question as I was the most interested in it. The anxiety naturally comes along with doing an assignment. Where do I start? What if I can't find sufficient sources? Thoughts like that. In hindsight, I'm proud of my efforts to develop a well-defined research question. I had a clear understanding of what makes a structured search. However, moving forward, I would like to challenge myself to use other reliable databases and to become confident navigating them, as using expensive databases ensure that I'm further conducting a comprehensive search for evidence. To speak on my point of navigating other databases confidently when searching multiple databases with my research question, I was confronted with just how confusing different databases can be. I noticed this most when trying to place limiters, especially when comparing CINAHL to Google Scholar. I found CINAHL a lot easier to navigate. Through this assignment, I learned just how significant a structured search is, just by the stark contrast of the amount of results I got when entering my unstructured search into the database. I must admit, I didn't think it would make that big of a difference. Now I know how much time I can save and how to effectively narrow down the evidence available to me. To enhance my future research skills, I plan to further affirm and develop my knowledge of different databases and search techniques. I will be proactive in my tutorial classes and complete my module readings for 202 evidence-based practice. Additionally, I will practice structuring my searches and using keywords, alternative words, Boolean phrases, and limiters when searching in the future. Well, that's it from me. You've made it to the end of the video. Happy researching!